one of the things that you said on our test run was that we could have opinions about the aftermath of COVID, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what we think about it. The reality is there's empirical data that's pointing to a lot of struggle and strife
Yeah.
on multiple dimensions.
Well, I was saying it doesn't matter what your opinion is on how big of a deal it is, because it's obviously a big deal to a lot of people, whether you believe it or not. Like whether you believe the virus is actually going to get you or not. As far as the aftermath goes, like I have no idea. None of us can really say. All I know is, like, as a musician, all of these festivals that we applied for this summer, like they're all canceled, and they're out in July, June, August. Like they're all done, and all these major tours are waiting till 2021. So like, buy into it or don't buy into it, but like things are changing. So I get a lot of that from some of my friends are like, man, I think it's like not that big of a deal. It's like, it's fine that you can have that opinion, but it really is to a lot of people. It's affecting a lot of people negatively. And I don't know that that's like what they're trying to say when they say, oh, I don't know if COVID is really that big of a deal, but maybe it's just more of like a skeptical opinion on the government, which I think a little bit of skepticism is healthy. But when you start to diminish people's how this is affecting them, I think that kind of is an issue.
What do you think that is? I mean, I feel like we've been fortunate enough to go to college, get a professional career, just starting out and being surrounded by other people like us.
Yeah, but again, like the idea that we went to college to have a professional degree, like there's a lot of people who have done that, who have gone to college, got decent jobs, as like, I don't know, engineers. And there are a lot of engineers right now who are out of work, like Ford engineers or, different manufacturing engineers that are just not needed as much right now. There's plenty of them that are out of work. So it's like, even then, you really just have to get lucky with the type of work you're in. Luckily, I'm working for a company that builds machines that, seam cans, and everybody needs their canned goods right now. So like, I'm fine. But there are other engineers who aren't. It's just luck of the draw, I feel like.
And we never went into our respective careers saying, well, if a pandemic does happen, they're not going to cut me. So,
but it is kind of weird. Like when I was interning at the place I work now, when I was in college, they would always say that. They'd always say like, it's a good job to have because if shit hits the fan, everyone needs their canned goods. And it's just like, oh, haha, that's funny. But now here we are, and it's just like, yikes, that was dark but true.
Yeah. I don't know if it has to do something when I switch Skype onto recording, but then it delays the audio and the visual again. But I mean, yes, yeah.
Oh God.
So I mean, audio's coming in fine.
Check. 1, 2, check. I mean, it's even matching up in mine with my vocal and my audio.
I think we'll be good. We'll be good. I think everyone will understand what we're trying to do.
But we need to get this right because it's unprofessional, Lewis, to have crappy audio and video unsynced. I could record it on my end and sync it up.
Yeah. Let's do that.
I could just record the audio.
We'll just do both. Can we do both? I mean, I'm recording now on my side. You record on your side?
Yeah, I'll hit record on mine and we'll see how it goes.
That's on me because I was thinking earlier we should just try that so that way we have options. But thank you for bringing that up.
Open up a new session here.
So while you do that, I'm going to tap dance around here for the viewers at home. For the viewers at home, this is the first video version of the podcast that I'm doing. And Nick Hartman, he's been pushing me to do video for years. And I've just made excuses after excuses. So it feels like in Stephen Pressfield's terms, this is the resistance just coming at me and trying to to stop the good news, the good word. And in the words of Joel Osteen, he would say that this is the devil. So this is this is the resistant devil that is just holding us back from getting
check.
the Lewis Lee podcast video version.
All right,
on
I'm
YouTube.
recording audio.
Cool.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No.
And I'm recording video.
Awesome.
All right.
I just wanted to tap dance. Because I want to keep the first 4 minutes that we had. I think it's important. I think keeping that the idea that our situation is our situation. It's not everyone's situation. And I think we all have to be patient and empathetic towards other people that right now are dealing with health issues or economic issues. So, do you feel like as a society, when you look at things like the stimulus check, do you feel like that's a step in the right direction of, we're gonna make sure we take care of our people?
It seems like it's half-assed, kind of. If you look to what other governments are doing for their people, like, yeah, it's great. I'm grateful. I can't say that I was, the most in need of something like that. I'm grateful for it though, and you do see a lot, and I have a lot of people who are close to me who one are business owners who are not small business owners, who couldn't get unemployment or haven't gotten it yet. And because they own a business, they try to get the small business loan, and then they can't get that either because the money dried up. And it's like, you're telling people they can't go to work. You're telling people they have to stay home, but also you can't get any help. So it's such a tricky place and a lot of those people are part of my family. And it's like, it's frustrating. It angers me that you can have a government tell you have to stay home, you have to do this, you have to do that, but like, we're not going to help you out. Or it's just so much chaos and disorder that I don't know. I don't know. There's so much that goes into it, but at the same time, you get the feeling that the people aren't getting the help they really need. I mean, I think that's obvious. I don't think I'm just like guessing at that. And there's so much arguing and bickering going on, and so we're not really directing our frustrations and anger towards the right place, which seems to be Washington right now. All the chaos that's happening up there. Our president telling people to inject themselves with Lysol. It's pretty interesting.
I feel like we need all hands on deck. We need all the resources that we can muster up, and it seems like there's people using resources to divide rather than work towards a solution.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, when you look at our leadership of the country on either side of the aisle, it doesn't seem to me that all energy is being focused on how do we make sure that one, the people or the safety of the people is paramount, and then two, how do we make sure that the people that are impacted health wise, they're taken care of, and then thirdly, how do we make sure that everyone is taken care of economically? I feel like we need everything, all of our energy focused on that, and it seems like people they kind of understand like that's what we need to do, but then they're using this also as an opportunity, like they're playing chess to kind of take shots at the other side, and
like it's like just games as usual.
Yeah, they're trying to make political maneuvers out of this when I don't think that we can afford to do that, because the virus doesn't care what side you voted for. And
right.
and the virus isn't going to help you, in your career or whatever. So we need to focus everything on trying to make sure that we're okay, that we're safe, that we're healthy, and that we can bounce back from this and help people financially. And it seems like if there's an ounce of outside of problem solving, that's wasted energy that could be used to help solve the problem.
I wonder how we're going to look back at this in like a year or 2 years from now and say, here's how our politicians handled it, and here's how things changed because of how they handled it. You could say that about the healthcare system. You could say that about the just the economic system we currently run under. But I'm interested to see like how we'll look back in the past, kind of like, the last time I think any of us really dealt with something like this. And I know you and I were pretty young, was like 9/11. So we look back at that time, we say, wow, our government really handled X, Y, and Z really poorly. And here are the changes that happened because of that. And I couldn't really verbalize exactly what those were, but you look at like TSA, it was non-existent really before 9/11. And then after 9/11, like all of these new rules are set in place to keep people safe. So I think that we're definitely going to see a lot of that. I just don't know exactly what it's going to be. Is it going to be like restaurants have to offset tables? Is it going to be like movie theaters have to keep space between each seat? Like, I don't know exactly what that is. Are we going to be mandated to wear masks everywhere we go? Who knows? But what we do know is that this is like, it's bad. I think the virus we know is bad, but there are other viruses we know of that if they were to jump from humans to, or from animals to humans, could potentially be a lot worse. One that we see currently, and I know you've probably listened to podcasts where they talked about it, is the wasting disease that they see in deer. And a lot of hunters are being told, like, hey, you have to go and test any animals that you kill, because if they have this disease, there's a chance that it could jump to humans. And if that happens, that's another pandemic on our hands. And who knows what that looks like? I don't know. But I do know that there's a lot of things that I don't want to say we have to look forward to, but like we have to prepare for these other issues that could stem from, I don't want to call it irresponsibility, but just the way that we handle our food, the way that we treat animals. And I think that that's shown itself prevalent in like the wet markets in China, industrial farming. We've dealt with bird flu, we've dealt with swine flu, and all those come from the way that we mass produce food. So it's interesting, but scary at the same time. I'm curious to see how this is going to change how we treat animals, how we treat our food, and how we get our food. And I don't know.
I was telling Jess that I feel like when we look at this, and we started the call talking about how this is unbelievable, right? And I feel like in terms of biology, in terms of physics, a virus is more real than the digits on their bank account, right? So like this is as concrete and this is as real as it gets, and it's overwhelming at times of like we can kind of look at what we've done in the past in similar situations of how we've developed a vaccine in X amount of time, but that doesn't guarantee anything, right? Like we can't really put a timeline on this thing. And it's just when you take the roof off of it and you say, well, it could be 18 months, but it could be forever. I mean, that is real. That is a real,
or that it potentially could be like another flu where we know that other strains already exist and you could get it yearly. So it's like, is a vaccine really going to be the end to what we know as COVID? I don't know.
Yeah. Fascinating times.
Not working on the forefront of that field, but you do see the numbers and how long it typically takes for a vaccine to be produced. And if there are other strains, like it sounds like there are articles saying that there are other strains and it's being passed to some other animals, and then you wonder, like, is a vaccine really going to be the solution? I have no idea. There's just so much unknown about it. We don't know how many people have actually had, that like we were talking about on Friday, there's studies coming out of California tested 3,000 some patients and found antibodies, and the numbers look like it's over 50 times more prevalent with people who have antibodies than they had initially expected, which means that it could be far more spread than we had thought, which, one could show that the mortality rate is much lower, but at the same time, like, we could have just missed all these people who had been passing away from just like, pneumonia or complications when they thought it was maybe the flu, all the way back in January, which is just crazy.
Yeah. And it's so crazy, and it's just so it's nerve-wracking when you take the ceiling off and you're like, no one is driving the spaceship. There's no like one, captain of the spaceship that can come in and say, this is what we do, right? We're just kind of at the will of nature, but that's always been the case. And I just feel like this is kind of the cold water being thrown on our face to wake us up from the great nap, in the words of Eric Weinstein. I'm so nervous.
The great nap. I like that.
I'm so nervous to butcher his last name, but I agree with you. We're going to look back in this, and there's things that we just don't know because we don't know. And we don't know on various levels, right? We don't know because time hasn't played out. We don't know because I'm not a scientist, right? Like I'm not in the laboratory looking at the data. I'm not on the front lines. I'm not an expert in this. I'm not an expert in policy. So there's just things that I don't know, and I could never know until just seeing the downstream impacts on it. And hopefully I'll be around to see it. Yeah.
There is like, it feels like it depends on who you talk to, the level of seriousness, but just seeing the stories coming out of like Italy, coming out of Spain, hell, coming out of, different states in this country. There's a lot of reason to worry about those who are susceptible to have complications or issues. Like, I know people are just open to saying like, it's not that big of a deal. I'm still going to continue to go to, Walmart, Lowe's. I don't really care. I'm going to bring my kids out. It's not a problem. A lot of people having like COVID parties where they spread it. Like that shit is bananas to me. And I know people who are close to me that work at grocery stores, that work at, hardware stores, and people who are at risk, and they still have to go to work because they need to work. And you have people out there every single day taking their service for granted. Going into those stores without masks, not following the guidelines, keeping away from people, coming in there when they have symptoms. It's just a high level of selfishness that I think we're all a little bit fed up with. And there is, whether it is a big deal or not, there is a level of anger that I harbor towards people like that, who are willing to go out and put others at risk just because of their own selfishness, just because they want to get their bedroom painted, or they want to put in that new deck out back. It's like, it's not that important. And if you can, not just look at yourself inward as like, here's what I have to do right now, or here's the things I need to do to be okay. It's like, look at those people who they have no choice otherwise but to go into those places of work. And you're just, it's selfishness, just the point blank, it's selfishness. And that's extremely frustrating. And you can't like look at those people and say, well, you shouldn't do this because X, Y, and Z. It just seems like you have to have somebody close to you in those situations to be empathetic. But like, that shouldn't be the case. You can show empathy, without knowing a specific case. Like, I'm telling you of these 3 people close to me right now, and like, it's a big deal to me. So I'm gonna do my best to distance. I'm gonna do my best to stay at home if I can, and I can.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem that difficult. But for so many, it is.
Yeah. And there's so many variables that are out of our control, that the ones that we do have control over, like staying at home and staying at least 6 to 10 feet away from people, and wearing masks, it just seems like those are so simple on the surface, but there's other things going on in people's lives and people's minds and people's opinions that kind of override that. So I have no idea. I don't know why. But it's unfortunate, and I don't think it puts us in the best position to move forward and to flatten the curve, if you will.
Right. And there's a lot of people who look at those type of things like keeping your distance as you're losing your freedoms. It's like, well, you could say the same thing for, now you have to go through metal detectors to get on an airplane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You, you're you're looking at this as your freedoms, but it's your selfishness that's getting in the way. You want to be able to go to the store whenever you want, but you don't care about the health and the safety of those who are servicing you in those
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
It's egotistical. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's those business models will have to change, and if you want to use those services, you will have to follow them. I hope that they become mandatory sooner rather than later, because there are too many people who are being put in just garbage situations, working in grocery stores and the like across the nation, and it's really frustrating to see the carelessness of so many people. And I can't stress that enough. Like I'm not overly anxious about this subject, but like it's very frustrating to know that people close to you are being put in that situation, and there's so many out there who just don't give a shit about it.
I appreciate your insight on this because, like I was saying before, I don't know if this was on this take of the call or our test run, but I was talking about how, to me, I feel like the theme that runs through engineers through each respective discipline is this the idea of reverse engineering, starting from the problem and then reverse engineering from there with possible solutions. You said you had some thoughts on that. But before we get into those thoughts on, what is that theme, the thread that goes through just engineering as a whole, I wanted to ask you, was there a moment in your life where you found out that you wanted to problem solve or build and create things?
I think that the underlying theme is probably the creating of things, being a creator. I think, a lot of us get that bug when we're young, whether it comes to what toys you decide to play with, when it comes to, if you get into music or you get into like shooting video or pictures. I think that theme was underlying for me. And when you are a creator, there is this era of problem solving. It comes with it. It's just they're naturally one that has to be with the other. And I don't know at any point that was like, oh, this is what I want to do, or if engineering was the one thing I was like, oh, I got to be an engineer. I think that was more along the lines of, here's how I want to be able to sustain myself once I leave my parents' house. But I think the creative aspect is something that I would go back to and say, this is why, I became an engineer, but also I became an engineer because I want to create, and I want to move past that in the future and solely being creating things that I want to create, whether that's content for the internet, or whether that's just, music for myself, or whatever it may be. I want to be creating. Like, that's what fulfills me. That's what gives me purpose. And if engineering was a side effect of that desire to create, then I'll take that for what it is. But I don't think engineering was ever in the books for me growing up. As like, oh, I have to do this. You know what I mean?
So and we've talked about this before, of how engineering is all about creativity. So you're an engineer, and then you're also a musician. I feel like on the engineering front, of course, it demands so much risk taking and creativity, but then you always fall back onto the scientific method. And there's kind of like there's these templates that you can use based off of other people's work that came before you, right, to kind of guide you and use as scaffolding. And I mean, the same, I would say, spirit exists in music, but the end result is a little bit more arbitrary, right? So you had told me in high school that there's no such thing as bad music. Now, your opinion may have evolved over time with that, but I think for me, what stuck out was this idea of, like in engineering, you could point at and say, well, this didn't work, or this hasn't worked yet, or you could point to it and say this does work, and here
Or
are
it
the
hasn't
reasons.
met the arbitrary standards that you set, or
Yeah,
what your goals were. Yeah.
yeah, but in music, it's much more broader. So, I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. How you balance that, as you know, how as someone who has a scientific mind and approach to things. How do you handle the art aspect of it?
I mean, I think that we all use the scientific method, and whether we're conscious about it or not. And as far as like adaptation goes, I think that that runs deep in all music. You know, it's looking at what people have done, and you can kind of extrapolate that into any field. But looking at what others have done with music in the past, and then taking all of these different styles and genres, and then like kind of putting them into your own voice and expressing it in your own way. I think that we all use that adaptation when it comes to many facets of our life, and we definitely
Mhm.
use the scientific method. You know, whether you're conscious about it or not, I think, going into engineering, you're just more conscious of the fact, like, here is the process I'm going to use. Whereas people who haven't, they're just like, here's my process. Here's how I get from A to B. Here's how I create. I think that they are actually relatively similar. Looking at a problem, coming up with a hypothesis why this problem exists, like how can I overcome it, and then
Mhm.
testing it. And I think we use that in subtle ways every day in our lives. But when you are conscious of it, when you call it, here's a name for this thing, that this process that we undergo, it just becomes more technical, but it doesn't mean you don't use it otherwise. Um,
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts? Have you thought about the source of creativity?
no, I don't know that I even understand the question. The source of creativity, the
Yeah.
desire to want to create.
Yeah, sure.
Hmm. Like, in general, or for myself personally?
Well, I would say, I mean, I feel like it would be very impactful to hear, for you personally, because it's like, um, whether it's in engineering or making music, you spend a lot of your time creating, right? So it's just like you have this output. So I wonder what your thoughts are when it comes to the input. You know what I mean? Like, what's the seed of that? How does it manifest? Is it just plucked from thin air? Do you have a muse? Do you feel like you're just kind of um, you're the product of your own environment, so you had no other choice but to put this out? I mean, just would love to hear your thoughts on. It's like, um, looking at your EP, right? Focal Point. That didn't exist in 2015, but now in 2020 it exists. So it's just like, I would love to hear your thoughts on how you think it goes from a seed to something.
That's a it's a thick question right there. I don't know, man. Um, where does my desire to create come from? That's not something I sit around thinking about much. It's just the ability to pull something out of nothing is intriguing.
Yeah.
To just allow your emotion to kind of take over and pull you in a certain direction, and then to recognize that direction and then continue to cultivate it,
Mm.
as it pulls you. I think that's how a song typically works. You're inspired by a sound, by an emotion, by a lyric, and then you allow it to pull you in a certain direction, and you just let it pull you. You don't like try to stifle that progress. You say, okay, I like where this is going. Oh, wow, that's a cool progression. Like, I've got this feeling right now in my life, or like this um I've got these problems going on. I really want to put that into words to be able to relate. And then before you know it, you've got this piece of work that came out of nothing, and you can look at it and say, wow, like, I created something. That just sitting there looking at something you created, whether that's art, whether that's music, whether that's a podcast, and saying, wow, that wasn't here before, and now it's here. And while it
Mm.
not probably isn't the best thing in the world, like, I feel proud of it. And it's that
Yeah.
feeling of like, I'm successful in that. I'm giving myself that success. I'm able to look at something that I created out of nothing and say, wow, that's pretty special. And then to extrapolate that into the future and say, here's here's where I started when I started creating music, and wow, that was really bad versus what I'm doing now. It's really cool to see that progress too.
Yeah.
I think the other side of that, the desire to create, comes from like the connection you're able to cultivate with others, whether that's through collaboration or sharing your work. It's an addiction. It truly is. Once you give somebody up this piece that was so personal to you, and it's terrifying in one aspect of it. I was thinking about this the other day because I'm collaborating with somebody on a track right now, and I'm sending him these different songs that I'm working on, and it's just like it's a terrifying feeling of like hear things that are so deeply connected to who I am, and I'm passing them on to another human being who might not feel it in the same way that I felt it, and is likely won't. And you're just like, are they going to hate it? Are they going to look at me in a different way? Like there's always that underlying tone to whatever you're creating. But I think at the end of the day, you still have to be honest to yourself about why you wanted to do these things, why these things were created in the first place, and release things that, like songs, for instance, that might not connect with a large amount of people, but truly meant something deeply to you, is difficult, but necessary. I think it's definitely necessary.
Wow. Difficult but necessary. That makes me think of your friend, the Reaper. Can you talk to us about?
See, that's one of those songs that we look back at as like, oh man, I can't believe we did that, and we're not really ever happy to play it, but we do get a few people who are like, oh, you guys should go back to that, and we're just like, nah. But it was one of those songs where it really it had a place in that moment of time, and it really meant something deeply to me when I was writing it. And you know, as you grow, as your style changes, your taste changes, you look back at certain things, you're like, I'm not too keen about that right now. But I think that song was important for what it was, for when it existed.
Yeah. Is there anything that's beneath the lyrics or beyond the lyrics that you'd be willing to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it. Somebody who's very close to me, I won't say who, had a loved one pass, and I was dealing directly with the emotional fallout of that loved one passing, and it wasn't directly, but I knew this person fairly well. Had met them several times, and it was just this idea that we're all going to have to face this, whether we like it or not. And it was just a stream of consciousness. I sat down one day and I just had this idea of like, well, if you allow the Reaper to be this, you know, death, for instance, if you allow death just to be this thing that hangs over your life and draws every ounce of joy from you, then it will. But if you look at it as more of like a friend, like, hey, this is my pal, like I'm gonna have to deal with this the rest of my life, whether I like it or not. It's no longer this thing of dread that you have to look at. It's something that we are all connected to, and we're all going to have to deal with. And if we look at it in a different way, we just flip that perspective, then it's not as difficult. And I know you can attest to that. The thought of death, the thinking of death, the thinking of this is going to end one day is such a terrifying fucking thing, but it's something we're all going to have to deal with. So how can we look at it in such a way that allows us to maximize our time here while not just sitting around being terrified? And I think that's where that one came from. And while I can feel a million different ways about it, I think there is still truth for me in that lyric.
Yeah, looking at the Reaper as a friend, as opposed to an enemy, is, I mean, I feel like that right there is the most difficult thing. One of the most difficult things. One of the things. Did I cut out?
Yeah,
Good?
I'm losing you.
Oh, you're losing me? We're good now?
I think we're good now.
Okay, cool. One of the things that you were talking about was the going back to the creative process. You're talking about the collaboration and how you enjoy that aspect of it. I know that you've told me that before. I've witnessed it in person by seeing you and Kevin not only play live but rehearse together. And for
Mm.
me, that was so powerful to see rehearsal and then see you guys play live. It really changes the music for me and the way I experience it. But I would love for you to take us back a step, and if you would be willing to share, how did you and Kevin meet, and how did that lead to the formation of Selena's Poly?
Yes, so we met through a mutual friend. When I was interning during college, my girlfriend had gone to DC for an internship, and I had a lot of free time on my hands. I wasn't really into like creative mode back then. I feel like I was just grinding, trying to get through college. But I had met my friend Nick, and we had been hanging out like all the time. And Kevin was his wife, but fiance at the time was her brother. So now Nick's brother-in-law, Kevin, and me met, and just one day he was like, "Hey, you want to come over and jam?" And at the time, I had never done something like that. It was such a foreign concept to me, which is kind of silly because like I feel like most musicians grow up just like jamming with their buddies, and for me that was just something I had never done. I had never even thought of the idea of like, hey, I could be in a band, or that was just such a foreign concept. So I think Kevin was the one that really cultivated that for me, and he started inviting me to play these like smaller shows, and it was terrifying, nerve wracking. And it still is to a point, but the more you do it, obviously, just like anything, the easier it gets and the better you get at it. And we just started jamming together, started playing open mics together. And yeah, one thing led to another. I feel like, yeah, that's about it. And we were just sitting around one night and we're like, we've been going to all these open mics. Like, let's make a band. Let's call it something. Let's just start booking shows, having not a single idea how to do that. And honestly, still, I barely know what the hell I'm doing half the time. But it's just you keep trying. You have to be willing to look like an idiot if you want to look like a master at something. And right now, I'm just looking like an idiot like 99% of the time.
Oh man, that's awesome. 30,000 foot level. On behalf of Selena's Poly, who would you guys say that you're trying to reach with your music?
I don't know that that's a conversation we've had. Like people who, relate, people who hit that same frequency or that same vibe that we put out. We don't really know our audience, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, maybe at this point, who you're trying to reach is, I feel like who you're trying to reach has to deal with that person who's willing and able to look at things from another perspective, being able to open themselves up to a different way of viewing things.
I could agree with that. But it's not something that we've sat down and consciously said, oh, here's the exact type of group of people we want to reach. Now, we've had the conversation of like, here's a type of band that we necessarily don't want to be.
And what's that? Are you willing to share?
No, I mean, I don't want to. I'm not going to be like negative about anything. We just, there's bands that hit certain vibes that we really enjoy listening to, but we do have a clear vision of kind of the people we're playing to, which kind of contradicts everything I just said. Because I think if you look at our name and you look at the music we make, we seem like a reggae-esque type band, but that's not really the vibe that we're going for. And not that I disapprove or dislike that type of music. I really do enjoy that music. But it just doesn't, it's not what our core is speaking from, I guess, is what I'm saying. And also like we've been doing this, 2-3 years now, which is a lot of time. But we still haven't really built a clear fan base. There's no clear signs of like what type of people enjoy our music. Like they're all over the place. So it's a little hard to answer that question, I feel like, at this point.
Yeah, and as third party, outsider view of um, saying that, I feel like the people that you're trying to reach are those that are open and willing to look at a different perspective. There's a lot of vulnerability in that. I feel like you and Kevin, when you guys are working on something, you put yourself out there in multiple ways, whether it's actually going to a show or actually putting how you feel in a way that makes sense for the melody of the song. There's a lot of vulnerability in that, and I feel like you guys have evolved over time with that, and it makes me think of just change, this ability to look at yourself and say, okay, there's something that's going to change about me. I'm going to change, and I'm not sure what that change may be or may hold, but I'm willing to be vulnerable to find out on the other side. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm off on that.
No, I mean, it's definitely been a huge growing process in that sense. And it's really easy for those, I feel like, because I hear it all the time, those people who don't put themselves out there in this way, to look at something someone's created and say, yikes, or that just is not good, or that doesn't connect with me.
Yeah.
But it goes back to that thing where you have to be willing to look a certain way until you've found your voice fully, until you've found what it is exactly that you want to say. And I think we're still kind of doing that. And unfortunately, a month and a half ago, we got into the studio and we laid down all of our rhythm tracks for this new album that we're very excited about. And we feel like is our voice. This is what we want to say to people.
Yeah.
And it just kind of all came to a screeching halt. And we like that whole week we were in there. It was like the week before May 15th, that week of May 15th, when everything really started to close down. It was like right before the restaurants closed. We had like all these, I think it was 8 tracks. All the rhythm was recorded, and we were like listening back to him like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is here. Like, we're ready to do this. And then nothing. It's just been almost 2 months of just disappointment. And I'm sure so many people are dealing with that, but we have this thing where we cannot wait to share it, and now there's just so much uncertainty in how that's even going to happen. We're really going to have to take a shift towards cultivating something online, whether that's a YouTube channel. I know me and Kevin have been working through covers to get up some just content here and there that we hold close to us. But as far as the album goes and how we're going to promote that, how we're going to play shows anymore, I have no idea how any of this is going to unfold at this point,
Yeah,
because the studio isn't even taking clients right now, so we're just kind of dead in the water with that. But we do really feel like this is something that we can share, that I don't know if you can say this as a creator where you've given stuff or you've released stuff that you were like, I'm not super confident about this. Like, I don't know how people are going to react to this. And then there's other things that you create where you're like, wow, I really enjoy this. And if you really enjoy it, then it's likely that other people are really going to enjoy it. Well, I feel like we finally gotten to a point where like, this is the music that we set out to create. It's here.
Oh, wow.
And we're excited to share it. When that happens, I have no idea.
Dude, that's crazy. I'm so excited now. I'm so pumped.
Yeah.
I feel like whenever we get the release date, I'm going to have to take some PTO time just to drive around and listen to it.
Speaking of PTO time, I know we're both going to have to take some here shortly and do this 24-hour walk.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so hyped for this, dude. Yeah, no. So we're doing this thing. We're gonna probably vlog it or do some sort of video footage for it. But it's inspired by ex-Navy SEAL Tom Shea, and he did this Unbreakable challenge is what he calls it. And it's when you go out, doesn't really matter where or when, you go on a 24-hour walk. And now that doesn't mean you walk nonstop for 24 hours. You obviously can take a break if you have to use the restroom or if you have to like eat something. But in general, you want to be standing, moving, walking for 24 hours straight. And a way that he describes it is that like in the first 6 hours, you feel accomplished. You feel like, wow, I'm feeling great. The next 6 hours, you have this feeling of like, I'm undefeatable. Like I did this crazy thing. It's been 12 hours and I'm walking, I feel good about myself. I'm achieving my goals. And then the next 6 hours, it really starts to kick in like, this sucks. You really start to question why you're doing what you're doing. You're on edge with your own thoughts. You kind of learn that you're the most boring person on the planet. And that's one thing that always stuck out to me when my buddy Mitchell, who had done it before, he's like, yeah, that's the biggest truth is like, if you're alone with your thoughts for 24 hours, you realize what a boring person you actually are. There's only so much you can think about to entertain yourself. And then the next 6 hours really is just like focusing on the first or the next 3 steps in front of you, not worrying about, what I'm going to be doing in 2 hours from now, not thinking about where I was in the past 6 hours, just like 3 steps in front of me. That's it. That's all I can focus on right now. And it puts you in a position to like be uncomfortable. And I think that's something we talk about a lot, is putting yourself in a position to be really uncomfortable. And it kind of like, for me personally, I want to take a step back from everything that's been going on and just really push myself to the next level of, I don't want to say pain, but like uncomfortability, like take away all of these, like, luxuries that I deal with day in and day out. Like I've got, a bed that I can go to. I sit all day. I've got all this food in my fridge, but no, I want to kind of strip some of that back and just like get back down to like bare bones and put myself in a position where I'm going to be in pain, and I know I'm going to be in pain, but I want to handle it. And I think it's very like sobering. And I'm not sure, I haven't really asked you, what's your reason for wanting to do it alongside of me?
Dude, because I'm afraid, and I feel like it's a compass. It's pointing me towards, I know that I'm going to be okay. Physically, I'm going to come out alive, right?
Right.
Barring any tragic accident that could happen at any time. It could happen if you go into the post office or go into the
dude. I mean, you get attacked by a goose. They're vicious out here.
But I'm very afraid of it, and I feel like the opportunity is here. I mean, I feel like I'm making a lot of excuses along the way, like I'm overthinking it and trying to be too strategic, and I just kind of buying me time or whatever. But I honestly feel like we're in a good position being so close to the national park. Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So I would like to kind of map that out.
Yeah, I'm thinking honestly that we just take a car up. We'll have to like see how long it takes to walk from point A to point B. But if we take a car up to where the towpath starts in Independence, we can just leave a car there, have another car parked at the end point, and then just start walking to that end point on the towpath. Obviously pick a point like mid to end May where we're going to have better weather, like 24 hours. I don't want it to be pouring down when we're trying to vlog.
I was thinking we should do it 2020 summer solstice, which would be like June 20th, June 21st.
That's pretty deep into the future. I don't know if I want to wait that long.
The reason why I was thinking we would do it that way is because it's the longest day of the year. So we would have the most amount of natural sunlight.
I got you. We can discuss that. That's a possibility. I am so May 13th. I should be getting gear to kind of weatherproof my camera. So
okay.
I think after that point, I'm open to start talking about dates, but before then, I'm definitely not, down. But yeah, I mean, end of May, beginning of June, I'd be okay with maybe pushing it out to June 20th. I'm open to it. Who knows what's going to happen from now till then? But there's other projects to work on.
I feel like that would give us some time and space to kind of figure out what the heck's going on with this COVID situation too.
Yeah,
which I know
possibly.
that's not gonna. I know it's not going to impact, what we're doing or whatever, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
So more to come on that. It makes me think of when I first came up here to the Cuyahoga National Park. Jess and I, we had moved to Cuyahoga Falls. The third time where the day that we moved in was the third time that we were here. So we had only visited the area twice before.
Hmm.
And like one was to just see where we wanted to live, and then two was signing the papers, and then three was moving everything in. So we fell in love with the place immediately. But it was a big change for us. And I know that the first time that I went to the Valley National Park, you had shown me some of your favorite spots. And we went out there for the first time. And I remember a conversation about change, and we were talking about change. And you had shared with me a story about how you were having a conversation with someone who they were afraid of their personality changing, right? Of going through something, going through an experience, and being vulnerable, and then and then I think you used the words of, well, what if you change because of this, right? And I feel like um, maybe that's the Salinas Poly fans, right? Like we know walking 24 hours is scary and it's crazy, but on the other side of that, we're going to come out changed as a result. So I don't know. I mean, not specifically with that story that I had brought up, or that person or whatever. But what are your thoughts about change, and how has it shifted? How has it morphed since, 2.5, 3 years ago when I moved up here?
I don't think it's changed. Uh, my
How
my
is
position
how
on
is your
change
view
hasn't
on
changed
change?
much. I think that you go, through phases of like wanting to push yourself. I know we've talked about this with certain experiences we've had in our lives, specifically in the past 4 years. That sometimes you're more willing to push yourself to the edge and be
Mm,
uncomfortable, but other times you're in a place where you want to feel as safe as possible, and that's just like just a wave that you ride
mm,
throughout life. And I know that like I want to push myself in those positions. I want to be uncomfortable. I want to like change. I want to change for the better, not the worst. But
mm,
I guess yeah, my position on it hasn't differed much from since
yeah,
you first moved up here. I just know that at times it's harder than others. I feel
yeah.
like I haven't, especially in these past 2 months, been pushing myself as much as I'd like to. You get complacent real easy, especially when you're, working from home like I am. It's
Mm,
very easy to become complacent and just get used to this routine.
mm.
Forget what day of the week it is. It's today, Wednesday or Friday. Who cares? I'm just gonna go to bed and wake up and then do it all over again. So I feel like that's not really a good environment to cultivate change, but maybe that's a challenge to like
Yeah,
put ourselves in this position to like go on a 24-hour walk, or I'm
yeah.
going to start, doing vlogs on YouTube, or I'm going to start creating music that I've never created before, which I am doing. And it's
That's
been a
awesome.
really, really cool process to see like what
Hmm.
I was capable of 3 years ago. And now I'm pushing myself in this time where it's really hard to push yourself. And I
Hmm.
hopefully will continue to do that. But
That's awesome, man. That's exciting. So you feel like your your point of view on change hasn't changed, but it sounds like you're just more competent in the way that you deal with change, right? Like you
yeah,
understand that
there
you
are
go through these cycles.
right. And there are different types of change too. There are like different levels of it. Like there are things that are like deeply rooted to who you are, like your relationships with people that I don't really want to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, do you want your relationship with your wife to change? Probably not if it's good. You know what I mean? But then there's changes that are more like novel changes that you can
Yeah.
make. Like I can put myself in uncomfortable novel situations, like going on a long ass walk or making new music or putting
Yeah.
content on YouTube. Like those are very novel changes. Um, and I think there's the harder changes, like you were talking about, like your personality or, going on a trip and coming back a different person. Like vacation or take trip, however you want to take it. But you know what I mean?
Yeah. I
So
got
there's different types when you come back and you're like, am I going to look back at that person and be happy with who I've become or be disappointed with who I've become? And I think as long as you say I'm going to be content and happy with who I've become because of this change, and I think that that's a good change. And sometimes it takes a bad experience to have a good change. But as long as
you.
you can like come out the other end looking back and saying, I went through that bullshit or that garbage or that bad time in my life, but I'm better for it. So you shouldn't necessarily be afraid of your personality changing, was an example that you used, as long as you've changed for the better, or the better in your own eyes.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll be able to say that after our 24-hour walk. Hopefully I'll be able to.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna like be groundbreaking information when we are done. We might be a little sore, but I don't know. I think that's about it.
You talked about this the state of working from home, and how it could be a challenge to push yourself in that environment. Any tips or tricks that you've dug up along the way working from home in the past 6 to 8 weeks?
No, I'm very new to it, to be honest. It's not. Like we were talking earlier, I feel like I've become complacent, and this past week has been the first week where I've been really pushing myself to get out of a kind of a groove of negativity and distress, because when you have such a big change in your life, it's easy to just kind of like, I don't know, not create. There's not much inspiration right now, but I've really pushed myself back to, like, we talked about, like the war of art, how you just have to sit down every day and do it regardless. And I have been doing that, and it's felt good pushing myself to do that. But I don't have any words of wisdom or like, oh, here's how you're going to get yourself out of that slump. Like, it's weird times. It's hard for a lot of people. So, like, don't feel bad about yourself if you're not being the most productive person, but take the time to like learn about yourself, learn about your craft. And I've been doing a lot of, and whether or not I'm putting out all of this content or this work, or I don't think I'm not going to hold myself. I'm not going to look at myself and say you're a bad creator because you didn't put out X, Y, and Z during the COVID lockdown. But I am taking the time to hone my skills and become better at my craft. And I think that's important, obviously.
So that was going to be my next question was, during this time, what do you feel like has been the best investment? It could be, time, money, resources, or whatever. And it sounds like you're the investment in practicing your craft.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what's your question with that?
I would say, what is the question? The question was going to be, what's been the best investment that you've made? And that could be money, or it could be time, it could be resources.
Putting my time into learning how to better express myself through music production, through visual production, like video, for instance. I've been putting a lot of time and effort into that. Just getting down to the bare bones of how each of these things, interwork, like lighting, video, text editing, Photoshop, Lightroom, becoming more competent with all these little things that allow you to relay your message better and connect with people. I've been spending a lot of time delving into all of those things, which the knowledge to be gained is immense and terrifying, just like anything. But it's with YouTube, it's incredible the shit that you can pull up and learn in 10, 20 minutes that you've never had access to before. So we've got all these professionals out there, showing what their tips and tricks are, and I'm able to take that, roll with it without having to go through all the trial and error that they've gone through.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. And I am this podcast is a testament to you stepping out into different domains such as Photoshop. The podcast, the cover art for the podcast, you made it great. It looks awesome, man. I'm forever indebted to you because of that. And it just, to me, it's an example of you're not just an engineer, you're not just a musician. You're someone who wants to create, and that willingness to push yourself to be able to, just express yourself in the most impactful ways, and embracing diversity and approaching that is inspiring. So thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to continue to create better and better content, whatever that might be. Just looking into the future, I just, I want to continue to get better at what I do. And I think that taking this time to learn, become a sponge, taking all the information I can. I think that that's what this lockdown has really given me, and I will take that as a positive overall.
That's awesome, man. And I've taken up over an hour of your time now. I appreciate it. This is awesome. I'm so thankful we did this. This is going up on YouTube, whether you like it or not, because it's not going to fit your standards, at least not on my side. But we'll take a look at your video. If you could just upload it to that Google folder that you had uploaded the cover art to. If you just want to drop, your video, your assets there, and then let me know. I'll go check it out and I'll compare it with this, and we'll go from there.
So I only have my audio in my video. I don't have your audio in your video.
Oh,
so I don't.
Cool.
I thought you were recording your stuff separately.
I'm just recording from the Skype app. So it just records this call basically.
Oh, so you're gonna get my audio too?
Yeah.
Oh.
So
I don't know how that's gonna go then.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But it is before I have one last question for you, and then we'll plug some resources. But the last question I have is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I think you've hit everything that we needed to hit.
Cool. Awesome.
Is there anything else you'd like to ask?
I can't do a second last question. I'm not going to do it. But the only thing I can...
Whatever you want, man.
The best way to wrap this up is if people are digging Nick Hartman and Salinas Poly, it's at Hartmanic and at Salinas Poly. That's SALINAS Poly, PALI. Music on Instagram. Anywhere else? Same on Facebook, right?
Right. I would say, keep an eye out on my Hartmanic stuff. YouTube specifically I've got a lot of content planned that I'm working on currently that I'm very, very proud of. I should have out shortly.
Hartmanic on YouTube.
Yep.
I'm going to go and subscribe right now. I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, man.
No problem, dude.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate this. I'm sure we'll talk soon before this drops, but I'm planning on dropping this on Thursday, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Sounds good, man.
Talk
Thanks
to you
for
soon.
having me. Peace.
Have a nice night. Bye.